Hi, everybody. I'm James. Thanks for staying. I know I'm standing here in between you and the pub and a long day of... so I'll try to be interesting. Let's see. I have a pretty interesting topic that I'll try to make some sense of. So why is this presentation called... why is it about modeling the future for the radical present? First thing I want to say is you can't predict the future. Okay, it's a fool's errand, so don't try to predict the future. Makes no sense. Futurists don't make much sense to me. But you can model it. So there's things to be learned about thinking about the future and how you think about it. And the conference of the last 2 days, so much imagining the future. It might be this, might be that. How do we figure out a future that's so unclear, but we need to begin to start making sense of it for people to come along with us? And then the radical present is right now. Everything's happening at the same time, right? If you get that feeling, it's because it's true. Everything's happening at the same time. So I'm actually going to be talking about building constructive narratives today. I'm going to be talking about storytelling. And why, you may ask, am I going to be talking about storytelling? Because that's what we do. That's what I've done. And why might you listen to me? So I, from 2000 to 2011, worked with Steve Jobs at Apple every day and launched iTunes, an iPod, an iPhone, an App Store, an iPad, launched the agency, Media Arts Lab, and launched a million things from the store to everything in between, 11 keynotes. So storytelling was something that manifests in Apple's ability to be a $3 trillion company. I think seminal in that is their ability to tell great stories. And imagine a future that was so unclear in the late 90s, that then turned out to be probably the last 15 years of technology. And so they imagined the future, and they story told us through that radical present. So I'm going to go into all of that. I'm going to use some case studies. I'm going to use Apple. After Apple, I worked with Brian Chesky, with my colleagues at Founder. So Founder's our company. I have 3 magnificent partners. We work with founders to develop their narratives. We worked with Brian Chesky at Airbnb to build the Trips platform in 2015-16. And we established the company in 2017, and Snapchat was our first, Evan Spiegel was our first client, I guess. And since then, we've worked with everyone from Patreon, the founders of Patreon, the founders of Roblox, the founders of Discord, everyone from SoRare to Louis Vuitton. So big and small, big storytelling. So what can I tell you? What can I teach you? What can I help you understand about how to build storytelling in a time of such uncertainty and a lack of sense of where the future is going? All right. So, and that's just the first slide. So I'm going to go backwards to go forwards to take you on this journey. So tens of thousands of years ago, Homo sapiens survived and thrived in this creation moment with new tools and by being social, right? So why did we beat the Neanderthals? Because we were social. Why did we beat other animals that were more powerful? Because we were social. So we built together things, and storytelling pulled us together. It's at the core of humanity. The agrarian revolution, right? The argument that we could all stay in a village because we know how to build food that's sustainable. We don't have to be hunter-gatherers. We can all stay in the village. And that village has a story. And amongst that, we're building new communities. And all the way to the Industrial Revolution. Up north here in the 16th century, some mills in the 16th century were converted from hand-built to machine-built, and the rest is history. And so that was the building of new systems. And so where are we right now? I would argue that we're in this age of reimagination. Because at the core of it, what AI is doing by capturing human intelligence in its manifest hugeness is unleashing the opportunity to reimagine everything. So show me the smartest person on the planet. AI has that and every other smartest person on the planet. And so you can then spend time with Da Vinci or Galileo or anyone else or Steve Jobs and all the combined human intelligence should allow for a reimagination and things like AI, synthetic biology, all the things we've heard about in the last couple of days are going to allow for that new awareness, new consciousness to happen. There's a big moment. So what do we do? So at Founder, we've been working with a lot of companies because we work with founders at sort of the cutting edge. So we've worked with an AI biotech called Okin, Thomas at Okin, and he was developing computer vision to solve basically cancer and finding out how one cancer cell looks different to another. Billions of images that the human eye cannot see the difference, but Okin technology can through computer vision. And so we developed a narrative for them, a new way of seeing. Right? You can see, with the computer's help, the difference between a cancerous cell, where it's going to develop, where it's not. Simple storytelling, people get it, I understand it, doesn't need a postgraduate degree in biology in order to understand that piece of storytelling. Bowery, those people that know, is a vertical farming company in the US, the largest amongst them. They grow lettuce in vertical farms. And we gave a narrative to Irving, which he was standing on stages talking about how we need to figure out a new food supply system. We gave him this idea of securing the future of food. Securing the future of food. Right now, when you think about the weather and where it's going, you worry about things like that. And so they started thinking about a Bowery for every city, that we can grow wherever we need to grow. The notion that we could grow wherever we need to grow wherever we need to grow, and securing the future of food was the story that Bowery brought to the world. A constructive narrative around the thing that they're doing. And I could go on. There's Diego at Pachama, an amazing chap from South America, who saw actually his house burnt down, and he saw climate change in action. And Pachama is one of the leading lights in terms of forcing action around carbon. And we gave him this narrative, which was around having a relationship with nature. And I'm proud to see that yesterday Apple did a video around their relationship with nature. And I prepared this slide before Apple did that yesterday. So if Apple does it, so goes the rest of the industry. Every company has to have a relationship with nature. 5 years from now, that will be in the annual report. What's your relationship with nature? Nature relations is a narrative that every company must move to have. So we're working with the bleeding edge companies that are starting that next dialogue in this radical present. So just a few examples. I don't need to tell you this, everything's being reimagined all at the same time, right? So whether it is foods, so we've introduced mycelium food and plant food, we work with Oatly around oat milk. Whether it's education, we're working with Ewan Blair, the son of Tony, who's got a company called Multiverse, which is somewhere in between, kind of a third way between work and education. Working while you're learning, learning while you're working. So do your kids go to college? Is that the right thing to do? Can they learn while they work and not just be vocational, but also learn skills? And everything else. And I think we're all feeling this tension in our lives and this radical moment that we're in. So the radical present is both, the present is radical, because it's changing everything, right? There's not really an area where you say, well, at least that's not changing, right? The radical is present. So I'm playing it both ways, but it's a tautology, but it doubles the impact, because everything is changing and at a radical speed. Okay, so here's what I really want to talk about. If you do nothing, or if on this stage or on other stages, I've heard a lot of people say, well, we don't really know, but we'll try and do it a bit more this and a bit less that. We need to move past that moment. We need to start telling positive narratives, constructive narratives. Because if you don't do that, destructive narratives will take over. I think we all know the evidence of social media and news is that people click on destructive narratives. Oh my God, something burnt down, something click, right? And of course, there are human tragedy stories there. And at the same time, I don't feel like we're building enough good constructive narratives. So we launched electric airplanes. Heart Aerospace builds a 59-seat airplane that can fly 300 kilometers. Immunology is on the road to curing cancer. New foods, solving, the industrial meat complex and giving alternatives. And so these stories need to be lifted up. Constructive narratives need to be the ones that people are talking about. And at least in balance with the disruptive narratives. If you can find companies, and I'm next week in New York with the Fast Company Innovation Festival, and I'm interviewing Brian Chesky at Airbnb on the stage. And actually the question we're asking is, can AI fuel imagination in travel? And so Brian is one of those intentional, constructive narrative builders. Airbnb is the world's biggest community-driven super brand. He wants to use AI to expand the imagination, expand human creativity. We need good companies like Airbnb to prove to us and show to the world, because then others follow. They pattern recognize. That was successful, let's do that. And if you don't create the constructive narratives, the destructive narratives take over. So everybody here and everybody that isn't here has a shared responsibility to do this. And it's going to take all of us, because it's going to be a myriad of different solutions. So I'm going to share a few models now in the experience that we've had together at Founder. There are just some very simple models that I'm hopeful you'll find useful. So where do you even start to tell a narrative, right? So a little oversimple, but I'll use Apple as the example. Every week we would talk about this issue with Steve. He would spend 2 hours every Wednesday, 1 till 3 for 11 years, talking about every single product we're going to launch and what's our storytelling. How's the brand and how are we describing that? And then what's the company saying, right? So let me give you some examples. What would iPod be without 1,000 songs in your pocket? Because the alternative was 12 skipping songs on if anybody's old enough to remember this, was 20 years ago, but it was a CD Walkman, right? And it skipped. It wasn't really a great solution. 1,000 songs in your pocket was like 1 billion songs in your pocket might sound today. iTunes, 99 cents for your favorite song versus I'll never pay for music again, right? Simple narrative that tackles the issue and makes it clear what the sense of the product is, right? So somewhat pragmatic messaging on products. Very simple and clear. There's an app for that. The App Store, the iPhone, there's an app for that. What is that? It's like a Swiss Army knife, does everything. There's an app you want to do that? You want to buy a black baseball cap? There's an app for that. You want to go to a conference? There's an app for that. You want to go for dinner? There's an app for that too. So those were all stories, and then Airbnb, don't go there, live there. Snapchat, real friends, right? You don't need to fake yourself on social media, because ephemerality means you can be real, and we can be real friends rather than, I don't know about you, but I don't have 15,000 friends, and I didn't have a great day just because I posted a picture of the sunset. So on Snapchat, it's not going to save the world, but people are real, and they just bring their friends on. I have teenage kids. That's what they do. They're real, it's small audience, and they're honest, like too honest. Pictures are terrible. The communication's it's visual communication, but it's real. So we thank ourselves for those mercies. And real friends is a behavior that is resilient all the way through Snapchat. So desire, creating desire, right? So, okay, we talked about products, being really clear, practical, don't be afraid of inevitable in terms of product messaging. The brand, I don't know, all the way from introducing keynotes, opening an app store, opening a retail store that changed retail, 2003. That was a brand experience. I'm an Apple person. I happen to be in Prague, and I walk in the store and I just suddenly feel better, right? And I just have a conversation, and they have the same thing, and it's the same, and I have this security of the Apple brand with the bite out of it. Think different, right? The brand communications, which said that Apple will do things differently. So all of those are brand level communications. Then the very highest level is company communication. Oftentimes we're working with founders, and this is a lot about the founder and their personal narrative as much as it is about the company and their narrative. So oftentimes we're doing that sort of Venn diagram, trying to figure out what the two are. But Steve, I'll give you an example. Steve came out very early in the 90s protecting privacy. I would argue that half the reason why most of the people in this room just have Apple products and probably spend a couple of grand every year without realizing it, go into an Apple store, just buy the next thing, because they trust Apple to not sell their data. They trust Apple to make a great product. They trust Apple to be a brand that they recognize and live with. So 3 levels, 3 different levels to think about narrative. Product, where you're sensing. Brand, where it's about desire. And company, where it's about belief. Belief is the depth of where trust comes from. And you have to prove in your actions what you say in your words. So if we just sort of double-click on that, don't be afraid of inevitable. Create simple messaging around products. It's your first level. Your second level is create desire around the brand. You're going to be nowhere if you don't have desire around the brand. People need to feel that that's desirable and pay what you want them to pay so that you're able to deliver the business that you want to deliver. And at the highest possible level, you're talking about belief, creating belief. And so thinking about narrative at all 3 of those levels, which is often what we're doing at Founder, with the founder of the company or with whoever's refounding the company if the founder's no longer with them. So that's like a framework to think about as you're thinking about narrative. So here's another thought. So we're in the middle of this massive change, but it's going to take a while, or is it? Right? So everybody's kind of leaving the door open to, well, ChatGPT 17 might be next Tuesday, right? I don't know. I mean, probably not next Tuesday, but you understand what I'm saying. When we looked at the Apple revolution, that was like a decade, right? It was probably 1999 to 2009, 2010. 2010 was like Nokia and BlackBerry sort of gave up. They were like, okay, whatever, you guys won. And 1999 was when, record companies were suing 13-year-olds for stealing music, right? So radical transformation took a decade. How long will this take? Who knows? I have no idea. Probably less than 10 years, but then if we're talking about general intelligence, who knows? Could be 20, 30 years. So we're going to call this long arc storytelling, no matter what. Climate tech, climate change is long arc storytelling, right? This summer's we've witnessed even more dramatic changes. The types of changes that need to happen faster. And so, but you don't see the immediate results of it, right? So how do we think about that when the time frame is so long and we're not even sure where we might finally land? So here's an idea about how to think about that. One of the best Steve quotes, and there are many, you can't connect the dots looking forwards. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. So, okay. So where are we going? We're going there. What does that look like? Well, it looks like, I don't know how we would have described it in 1999, but probably something around technology in everybody's pocket that's beautiful and elegant, easy to use, and it's just there. Your stuff is there, and there's nothing in between you and that, right? A screen. That's always been kind of Apple's vision. They wouldn't have described it as a screen, but that's always been Apple using design to create beautiful and elegant relationships so that your stuff, you're being creative, you're thinking different. And so that trajectory of the long arc storytelling, it's very important to decide where you're going, some sense of where that's going, so that's the first job. But the second job is to come out with the immediate next action. What do I want people to do? Because there's no good being the 10 years from now company. On its own, it's utterly useless. I'm going to be really interesting in 10 years. Okay, great. I'll see you in 10 years. I can't remember you in 10 years. What do you want me to do now? So I'll give you an example of this, and it's a climate tech company, as I said. So Sweep gets companies to track their carbon. And so we gave them an idea, which was trying to encourage companies to track their carbon, right? They were basically pushing it off. Oh, we don't want to track our carbon. It's like once we start, once you start, it'll be a job to do. So let's get going. We gave them 2 ideas. Number 1 is where are we going? And we called it a forever company. Every company wants to be a forever company. That's where we're going. What's a forever company? It's one that everyone can get behind because they're tackling nature as a topic. They have a relationship with nature. So building forever companies are companies that your kids are going to want to work for because they, back in 2023, committed to reducing their carbon. Don't wait till 2030 when they're the last in the category doing that, because your kids will not be buying their products. Right? So get ahead of it. Think of the future, forever company. But their business today was getting people to count their carbon. So we gave them this idea, put your carbon on track. Right? Just put it on track. Doesn't sound hard, put it on track. Right? So long distance thinking, long distance narrative. So I'm sort of shifting the axis now on like not product, brand, company. I'm shifting the time axis. So where are we going in the future? An intentional, constructive narrative has a strong view of where that's going. We met Brian Chesky at Airbnb, and he told us belong anywhere. 2014. Belong anywhere. No one has ever really understood that statement, but I think what it means is wherever you go, feel some sense of belonging. Connect with other humans. And humans let their homes to other people, and they bring them into their homes, and you can go there, not just go there, you can live there. You can act like a local. You can feel like you're a local. You're not a stupid tourist in a hotel. You're actually living in the place. And so that kind of communication helps you with that too. So here's another model that we use, which is think about the time frame, think about the big picture long arc, think about the immediate action, and have ideas around both those things. So, okay, I promised to talk about we can't predict the future. What's the model? I'm going to show you a model for how to think about the future, even though I'm not pretending to predict it. You can model it. Before I do that, I'm just going to talk about how I think innovators need a new playbook. Innovation is no longer good enough to, here's a nice product, clear, when the radical present involves multiple levels of change, systemic changes, new roles, new responsibilities. Just the very fact that it needs masses of data in a category means that people have to work together, right? I recorded a podcast last week for Fast Company, Most Innovative Company podcast with Thomas at Oakin, so it'll come out in a month from now. And he talked about how he had to bring the industry together to federate learning, bring all the data together. He developed technology that meant that the data didn't need to leave your privacy, but they sent the AI in to extract the information, and they pulled it all together. They got 10 pharmaceutical companies to work together. So a new type of innovator is a company that can bring people together to make data work. Right? There's tons of data. They're just in millions of different places behind firewalls. How do you bring them together? An innovator of today has to find out how to bring people together. They have to think about the systemic changes, the models, the roles, the partnerships, and the products. It's a new type of playbook. I might say, if I went back again to 2000 or 1999, that this was literally what we did when we looked at what devices and software, if we're going to digitize data and create supercomputers in your pocket, we need to get the record industry to stop suing 13-year-olds and charge $1 a song. We need to open stores to show people how this works. We need to make sure carriers shift their responsibility to you actually wanting a phone and having a relationship with the phone rather than having a relationship with the carrier that has no relationship with the products and the software. You were having a relationship with the supplier, not the relationship with the device and the technology. So that was the first deal that Steve did with AT&T that secured his ability for them to be Apple. So he restructured the entire industry. You might argue that some of this playbook was already in play 20 years ago. Okay, so I am going to go into this three-step model. This is the last thing I'm going to do, and then you can go and have a drink. You might need one after this. Okay, so my partners and I at Founder come up with what we've observed in the world across 30 years of working with big tech companies, small tech companies, people that have changed the world on numerous occasions. There are three big stages that happen. The first one is the shock absorber. AI is kind of in the shock absorber, right? I think this whole conference is kind of a shock absorber. Kind of like, oh my God, if another person says, I don't know where it's going, but it could be good, it's going to be great, it's going to be awesome, but it's a bit scary, right? That's enough of that, right? We got that. And I don't mean to, I think it's important that people do that. I like that Yuval does that. And many others. But we need to move past that. We need to find a bridge. We need to start telling stories. We need to start showing case studies, good case studies maybe. Airbnb is one of them. where you show AI to have expanded imagination, not limit it. And pretty quickly, when you start telling stories about that, people follow it. It's our responsibility to tell those stories, to become the bridge to a future that we all imagine can be incredibly productive for humankind, can expand imagination, but in the wrong hand with the wrong stories, maybe the stories that are more destructive are the ones that people are following. So this is a model that I'm going to take you through quickly. You start with the shock absorber moment. It's kind of like a single use case. It's a oh my God, this AI thing's amazing. And we're looking for bridges right now. Single use case, something's happening, oh my God, the future's going to be crazy and different. We don't know how. The important thing, and frankly where my colleagues and I at Founder often work, is on how do you become the bridge for where the category is today to where it's going to go. How do you tell that story? And so that story is told. It's about introducing the new with the familiar. Another wonderful phrase from Steve. What does that mean? Never introduce new with new. New is what you see at Brookstone, that innovation store at the airport where you sort of buy something and then wish you hadn't, right? And sorry if anybody works for Brookstone, but you understand what I mean, right? Never made it, just a piece of technology that a bunch of tech people try. If you want to get into real culture, it has to be familiar. It has to be introduced through the things that you do today, but maybe in a new way, or new things that you do today in a familiar way. So always introducing the new with the familiar and understanding to be a bridge to humanity that wants to understand how its attitudes and behaviors should shift. You have a responsibility to tell a narrative that combines both of those. And then in the end, you get to the springboard, and that's where you get to a new category defined by where we hope is the future of AI. Productivity, imagination, doing things that solving cancer, doing things we've never done before, solving the climate crisis, because AI helped us, because we followed positive narratives and constructed them. And of course, Apple's the greatest case study of all. The shock absorber was the iPod, right? What's this? Music, I love it, 1,000 songs, shit, whoa, that's amazing. Earphones, plug it in my computer, get everything downloaded. Amazing, 1,000? And I can organize it with a click wheel. Sounds good. Hardware, software works together. Beautiful. Turns into a screen that starts feeling a bit like an iPhone. The iPhone is the bridge. This device, if you remember the standing on stage, is it an internet communicator, a phone, a music device? Is it an internet communicator, a phone, a music? Are you getting it yet? Right? And everyone went, oh my God. It's one device. It was the device that was the bridge, right? So I don't know whether we can find an iPhone for AI. I'm not sure I can reach that bar. But it was the moment that allowed them to then create a new category. And I actually think the springboard was the App Store. Because the App Store clearly suggested that the phone is a Swiss Army knife. It does everything. It does anything you want to do. So stop thinking about a phone as something with buttons that makes phone calls, and I can look at the internet as long as it's a postage stamp, and I text people. It's basically what the iPhone did before. Maybe I'll do some emails on a BlackBerry. Or a smartphone that had 37 buttons on it, which I didn't understand. And you move to thinking about, I can do everything on my phone, right? I don't know how many times, but now, particularly I think people do pretty much everything on their phone. And their computer is just a larger screen version of that. So that transition, you can see it so clearly through those three products. You can see the shock absorber, you see the bridge, and you can see the springboard. Okay, so I'm going to come off because I think I'm done before people start throwing things. The last thing, this is really capturing the thing I wanted to say today. So we're in the radical present, but let's make it a livable present and a radical future. How do we do that? We tell better stories. We tell better stories at product level, at brand level, at the company level. A year from now, CogX, people up on stage saying, here's a great use case, here's a great use case, let's go do that, let's write about it, let's have humanity follow those great case studies, because I think the world will be a better place when we do that. Thank you.